Welcome to Care Sandwich, the podcast where we dive into the success journeys of law firm owners across the country. I'm Margarita Everline, your host and the founder of Marketing Boss, a fractional chief marketing officer firm for law firms. On this show, we'll explore the challenges, strategies, and victories that have shaped law firms and how they wrap every interaction with care. Because we believe that caring isn't just a value, it's a strategy for success. So grab your favorite sandwich, sit back, and let's dig into a conversation filled with insight, inspiration, and of course, a lot of care. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Care Sandwich. I have Taylor with me, and he is an attorney in New York. He's going to tell us all about his law firm, what he does, and how he helps people. But before he talks to us about that, Taylor is going to tell us what is his favorite sandwich.
Oh, hey, Margarita. Thanks for having me on. My favorite sandwich, I think I have to go chicken parm.
In a sandwich?
Chicken parm sandwich. Hero, like a hero.
Okay.
Yeah, always the go-to.
I've never had one. Okay. I'll bite. Yeah.
You got to check it out. It'll change your world.
So, Taylor, you do so much for people. You and I had a conversation before the podcast interview about how you help people in the workplace that, have maybe no idea what their rights are as employees. And I want you to talk about that. What do you do? Who do you help? And in what area? And
Yeah, so our firm, we represent employees who've been discriminated against, face sexual harassment, sexual assault, haven't been paid their correct wages, like haven't been paid overtime, for example. And unfortunately, these sort of issues pop up time and time again in all sorts of different industries. And so that's primarily who we represent. And a big thing that I'm focusing on now is really informing people and employees that you need to be proactive about your employment rights, because if you are not, you're probably leaving some sort of protections on the table. So if something bad happens, and most of the time it's a firing, right? An unlawful firing. If you're
not a physical fire, but you're fired.
No, hopefully not. Hopefully there's no physical fire in your employment situation. But yeah, if you're let go for an unlawful reason, and maybe you didn't take A, B, C steps before that happened, even though you kind of felt something was wrong, you're maybe leaving some protections on the table.
So I've been an employee at companies before I had my own business, and I'm going down memory lane of what that was like. Like, how would somebody know that it's time to contact you to prevent an issue that may or may not happen? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so a lot of the time there's maybe something that happens, right? If you're a woman, maybe you get pregnant, right? And so now you're announcing your pregnancy at work. If unfortunately you suffer, you have some sort of physical ailment or mental illness that results in a disability, right? That could be sort of a changing event. Maybe you reach a certain age, right? You're 40 or older, and you start to notice different treatments. So those sort of things happen, and you start to notice a change in how you're treated, right?
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to use the word trigger because that's what helps me understand, but the trigger would be a life event, like a pregnancy, getting older. Oh, that happens to all of us. And then you also have to have associated with these life changes or these triggers, the sense that something's not right. You're being treated differently.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we all deal with difficult people in the workplace. Maybe a supervisor we don't like, someone we don't get along with. It's sort of
why Office Space is so popular.
It's sort of inevitable, right, in the workplace. Yeah. But just because someone's a jerk, just because you don't get along with someone, doesn't mean that that's protected under the law, right? Mm-hmm. But if someone is discriminating against you, again, because you're pregnant, because you now have a disability or you've reached a certain age, that's unlawful, right? And the typical situation we see is with the firing, but it could be other things like a demotion, having certain job responsibilities or, top clients being taken away from you. All those sort of things might contribute to that and might be actionable under the law.
It's interesting because, the last time that we were talking about this, I started thinking about how many people I've witnessed and that I've even experienced some stuff myself before having my own business, where it's like you don't even know that there's anything that can be done. And then what you mentioned to me was that there are preventative steps that you can take. So assuming that whoever's watching this doesn't even see it coming, it's not even on their radar, but they should know just in case what to do in those major, I'm going to call them life triggers or life events. Can you give us a couple of tips? Like, say you're pregnant. What are things that you should know about pregnancy? Say you feel like you're getting older or you're aging. What can you give us a couple of just nuggets?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can use pregnancy as an example. So, it's very exciting news that you're pregnant, right? And obviously at some point you're going, whenever you decide, you're going to share it with your employer, and hopefully they're, respectful of it, accommodating towards it. But often, sometimes they're not, right? I've certainly dealt with a number of pregnancy discrimination cases in my career. And so the typical things you'll see are sort of like the gut feeling, right? You get a gut feeling that something's changed, right? Maybe you're being micromanaged now. Maybe, like I said, those top clients or projects are being taken away from you. And so whether that's happened or you're fearful that that might happen, an important thing to know is that you can make what's called a protected complaint, right? If you do get that gut feeling, if you start to feel like something's off, you're going to want to put something in writing, right, to someone who can do something about it, whether it's a supervisor, human resources, or someone in a position of authority, very generically, hey, Jim, I feel like I'm being discriminated against based on my pregnancy. Now, here are the reasons why, right? I used to have all these clients. Now I told you I was pregnant and they've been taken away. I was a stellar employee, years of positive performance reviews, but all of a sudden I'm being criticized, for things that I wasn't being criticized before. I got a negative performance review for the first time ever. You're talking about putting me on a performance improvement plan or some other sort of performance related, like training or something like that. So those sorts of things are certainly things to be on the lookout for. And oftentimes what I see is, there may be a feeling that, okay, like this is maybe temporary, like I'm just going to work a little bit harder and things are going to get better. But oftentimes it goes the other direction and things get worse. And they're sort of building a file or like a record that, you're not a good employee. So if they do decide to, fire you, which is the most likely sort of adverse action we see, then they have something else to point to. Like, hey, it wasn't because Jane was pregnant. It's because of these weeks and months of bad performance. We just got to let you go. Right.
Yeah. So if you're watching this is good for you to know, even if you're not a prospective person that might have a claim like this, but if you're an attorney and you own a law firm and this is outside of your practice area, it's really good to know. I, as a marketer, have seen just about every law firm that I've ever worked with gets calls for things that they don't do. And it's so important to provide people with a good customer experience, even if they're calling you for something outside your practice area, right? Maybe you're a workers' compensation attorney and you get calls from people that need this sort of help. You need to know some of these things so that okay, maybe I need to refer this out and build a network, because these people do deserve help. I went through some stuff when I was pregnant, and was working at an agency, and this is kind of how we got talking about, you need to be on my podcast. I remember I was pregnant with my third and I was working at an agency and I was highly coveted for this job. And then all of a sudden, like, my belly gets bigger and it's noticeable, and all of a sudden, poor performance. And then I ended up getting fired. I didn't know I could do anything about it. And then because of my poor performance, and then as soon as my baby was about 3 months old, they were like asking me to come back to work. And I was like, but you said I sucked. Like, what? So, wow. So I just wanted to share that because, this is important. Even if this is outside your practice area, you should know a little bit about how to qualify these cases and maybe how to help guide people to an attorney that can help them. So Taylor, how did you get involved with this practice area? Because I also want to talk about that a lot of law firm owners that I talk to don't want to do this type of law. Like, why did you choose this type of law? Why is this important to you?
Yeah, so before going to law school, I wanted to understand what it was like to work in a law firm, right? I'm going to be committing a lot of money, a lot of time into getting this degree. What is it actually like out there, right?
And maybe your
So,
soul a little bit,
yeah, definitely the soul too. But so I worked at a plaintiff side firm similar to what our firm does in New York City, and I worked there for 2 years as a paralegal. Got to see these sort of cases, got to interact with the clients, see how it impacted them, see if when we were able to get a good result for them, how much it meant to them, and how much they were able to sort of let this terrible experience go and move on with their lives, which was pretty rewarding. And so I dabbled with a couple of different things in law school, but kept coming back to this. And ever since I've graduated, that's what I've been working on.
That's amazing.
Hey there, I hope you're enjoying the conversation and your sandwich as much as we are. I want to take a moment to share a few words about our sponsor, Marketing Boss. If you're a law firm owner looking to supercharge your growth, our team at Marketing Boss is here to help. We've got over a decade of experience and a proven track record, and we specialize in growing law firms like yours with data-driven marketing leadership. So if you own a law firm and you're ready to get a predictable, steady flow of cases from your marketing, let's connect at marketing-boss.com.
So it was an opportunity that you saw. And how do you feel that you help people without necessarily sacrificing your business? Because I can imagine that you have people that are going through some serious trauma, and you've got to balance getting things done and also providing good service. Like, give us some tips of things that you've applied in your firm that can help other owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our practice is focused is on, focusing very much on the merits of cases, right? We try to be selective in the cases that we take, not necessarily, bringing stuff for nuisance value sort of settlements. So we try to add value to our cases in that sort of way, and being selective, and then understanding, right, what our capacity is, we know what goes into these sort of lawsuits. We know that sometimes they could settle very early on, even before filing, but you could be in a fight for a couple years. So understanding what the workload looks like. But one important point is, that I think is related, is that we provide sort of, I don't know if it's like free advice or free help even before there might be viable claims, right? So if somebody has that gut feeling, things are starting to change, but they haven't been fired yet, nothing bad has necessarily happened other than maybe some like
major, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're getting like increased performance critiques, but the firing hasn't happened. There hasn't been a demotion, right? We will obviously speak to people, tell them about the employment law so that they understand their rights, but then help them actually draft those protected complaints, right? Because again, if you're not including the right language or saying things the right way, maybe a court says, you know what, you complained, but it's not protected in what the law recognizes. So,
wow.
So we'll do that even, and sometimes I've done that and I never hear from the person again, and I hope everything sort of worked out. Other times we've done that and it has led to a firing, and then the person who then became a client was in a much, much better position from a legal standpoint with his or her claims.
How do you balance your resources to be able to do that? That's amazing, by the way. Congratulations. But how do you actually do that without burning yourself out? Because that's a concern that I hear from a lot of law firm owners. Like in the PI space, for example, they're like, oh, we don't do property damage claim, but if we helped people with every property damage claim, like we would be out of business, like doing free work, right? So how do you do that? Like, how do you manage that workflow?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously being selective again in how I'm helping with those sort of complaints. Yeah. If I'm doing an intake call and there's really nothing here, there's not much I can add, then obviously in those situations we're not helping. But if there are several like sort of examples, things that the person's pointing to that, hey, yeah, this could actually be discrimination, and you probably should put in a complaint, we will do that. And I actually see that as critical to our business model, because if we're adding that sort of value for no cost, hopefully then they're coming back to us. So I think it's important for us to work that in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can imagine when I was in my situation, if I would have called you and said, hey, my boss is not letting me take lunch anymore and I'm not eating anything all day until like 5, something's wrong. I
Yeah.
bet you could have probably helped me and that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Um, oh, the things we go through. But anyway, I digress. Taylor, what is something that you would advise other law firm owners that are thinking about going into this practice area that they should know, they should do to set themselves up to really provide quality service? Aside from what you've already mentioned, how, you prioritize helping people even before and things like that. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so I guess it depends which side you're going on, whether you want to, be somebody who's representing employees like we do, or representing employers on the other side. But I find that networking and being a part of, local bar events, attending those when you can, and becoming familiar with your community, whichever, locality you're trying to serve. Because oftentimes we get referrals from people on the employer side, like, hey, I know Taylor and his firm do a good job. Like, we're going to send them a case. So that can
Wow.
certainly be good for client generation and just building relationships, right? If you have a better relationship with someone on the other side, it could, and I've seen it happen, help reach a resolution maybe quicker, or maybe even reach a better resolution than if it was completely adversarial. So those sort of networking events, and letting people know you exist, because for us small business owners, no one knows we exist. So
Yeah.
doing everything you can to make that happen.
Well, Taylor, walk us through again what geographic area you serve, and then how can people get in touch with you to refer you a case?
Yeah, absolutely. So we represent people in New York, the entire state, as well as Florida. We take cases all over both states.
Wonderful.
The best way to contact us, learn more about what we do, and how we will represent you, is to visit our website, which is crabillaw.com. I'm sure you just if you Google Crabill Law PLLC, you'll find it as well. Our number is 727-335-1030. You can give us a call as well. Through our site, you can book a free and confidential video conference, where I will go through in a detailed way your situation, explain your rights, and if it's appropriate, help you come up with a protected complaint.
That's amazing. And just out of curiosity, like how expensive is a protective complaint? Because I bet, people need to have an idea of the sense of this before they even take that next step to see if it's even worth it.
In retaining a lawyer to do that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we do it for free. So, but it can be involved. You want to obviously make sure that the complaint is detailed and it checks the boxes to be protected. So if an attorney was charging for it, I could easily see someone having to put anywhere from like a half an hour to 2 hours in between the phone call, drafting the complaint, and us lawyers, we charge a hefty hourly fee sometimes. So having that sort of value up front.
But it's well worth it if it's a couple hours of a lawyer's time. I mean, that's really not, or an hour or half an hour of a lawyer's time, and it'll help you with the situation to like get rid of it or protect you if you do get fired and need to actually take on a case. That's amazing. That's a great deal.
Yeah, and another thing is, if you contact a lawyer, you don't necessarily have to take action, right?
Right.
You could call us. I could tell you your rights, give you my assessment of your situation, and ultimately you decide not to do anything. But at the very least, taking those steps to understand what your options are and making sure that you're making the most informed decision, I think, is the most important thing.
So if you're listening to this and you're in either New York or Florida and you are a law firm owner and you get one of these cases coming through your door, don't just say, sorry, we don't do that. You know where to send it now. And if you are somebody or know somebody that's going through something in those areas, definitely get in touch and just find out. A consultation that you get, very generous of you for doing that. And you'll get some help with some preventative measures. It's amazing.
Yep, happy to speak to anybody.
So Taylor, are there any other words of advice that you would give attorney owners about how to take care of their clients and go above and beyond, aside from giving them stuff for free? Goodness gracious that you do that.
Yeah, I mean, regularly staying in touch with them, right? our day-to-day as attorneys it can be very busy at times, and juggling different cases. But for that person, it's their only case, right? So making sure they're getting regular updates, responding promptly, really building that trust and relationship with them, because at the end of it, hopefully you can get some sort of positive, review, whether that's online or something you want to include on your website. Those things are just very powerful in helping generate leads. So understanding that while you're working on someone's case, it could be bigger than just that case, right? And making sure you're providing the best experience you can. I
love that. I love what you said about, for you as a law firm owner, you have many cases, but for each one of your clients, like, that's their only case. And in many cases, pun intended, that's their life. What is it with me and word puns today? Goodness gracious. And it's a big deal. And I think getting in touch with that aspect will help make it easier to be more compassionate and more attentive to their needs. I think that's a really, really good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of attorneys have really good intentions, and it's so easy to just get caught up in the machine. I don't know, I talked about the E-Myth book earlier in my mastermind, but it's really a tough job emotionally. I don't think people talk about that enough. So it's no wonder why, a lot of attorneys just kind of have to shut that off. But I think it's perfectly fine if you can find a healthy way to connect with your human side. Yes. And remember that you're dealing with humans. You'll definitely provide a better experience and still be able to build your business without feeling overwhelmed. So,
so important, and I can't tell you how many times people, they just really appreciate that little extra little bit of care.
Yeah, and like I said, I think a lot of attorneys want to. They want to be nice and attentive and all these things. It's just, y'all have a hard job. So forgive yourself if you're not doing it perfectly. Take some of these tips that Taylor gave you and just remember, what role you're playing in people's lives and how big of a deal it is for them. So Taylor, is there anything else that you'd like to share? And remind us again how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of great stuff. And you can, like I said, the best way to contact us is through our website. And our phone number, which is 727-335-1030.
Awesome, Taylor. Well, you rock. And you watching and listening to this and sending Taylor some case referrals, you rock too. We'll catch you next time on the next episode of Care Sandwich. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Margarita.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Care Sandwich. Remember, the way we care for our clients, our teams, and ourselves can make all the difference in our success. Until next time, keep caring, keep growing, and I'll see you on the next episode of Care Sandwich.